Welcome to Yahoo Finance Sports Report, a unique look at the business of sports, brought to you by Yahoo Finance and Yahoo Sports. I'm your host, Joe Pompliano, and I'm here to coach you through the financial game. We'll look beyond the headlines, analyze all the latest sports news, the teams, trades, and billion-dollar deals, so you and your portfolio will win big. This week, we're talking all about basketball in the pod, from the NBA to the NCAA to Patrick Mahomes' involvement with the WNBA. We've got it all for you guys today. Plus, Steve Phelps, president of NASCAR, is stopping by the show to discuss all things about the racing giant. Let's huddle up and get right into it. It's time for this week's Pomps Playbook, where I take a look at some of the biggest headlines in sports that you and your portfolio need to know. First, I want to start with Amazon adding a Black Friday NBA game for 2025. Now, many of you will remember that Amazon recently signed a deal with the NBA that will pay $1.8 billion per year starting in 2025 to 2026, giving them access to a host of NBA games throughout the season. But now Amazon has announced that one of their games in 2025 will be on Black Friday. This is a really interesting development because this is clearly a strategy for Amazon, trying to build out their sports portfolio rights on a holiday where people traditionally go to stores to do their shopping. And now they want to convert those people to online shoppers on this shopping holiday. We saw it last year when Amazon paid $100 million for the NFL's first ever Black Friday game. That game between the Jets and the Dolphins averaged just under 10 million viewers. But more importantly, Amazon was able to display some really interesting technology, where viewers were able to look at the commercials on the screen, select products, and check out without ever leaving the screen or the broadcast. And now Amazon is going to be using that same strategy, using the NFL game as a lead-in for this NBA game in 2025, using the NFL as a way to increase viewership because of the lead-in for a game that traditionally would only get a handful million of viewers. Now, this game could potentially get 2 or 3 times more viewers because of the NFL. The next thing I'm watching is the Philadelphia 76ers. The Philadelphia 76ers are only about 6 games into the season, but it's been rough to say the least, both on the court, but also off the court. If we start on the court, the team is currently 1-5, and they have the second worst winning percentage in the entire Eastern Conference. But off the court, it's somehow been even worse. The Philadelphia 76ers were fined $100,000 by the NBA for misleading comments by the team's president, Daryl Morey, and the team's head coach, Nick Nurse, regarding an injury report with star Joel Embiid. But somehow, it even got worse this past weekend. The NBA is now investigating Joel Embiid for reportedly shoving a reporter after a game this past Saturday. Now, shoving a reporter is obviously not great, but I think some context here is probably important. The reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer wrote an article talking about Joel Embiid's inability to stay on the court and his health status. And in that article, he specifically mentioned Joel Embiid's son and his late brother who passed away in a car accident. Joel Embiid didn't take kind to that, and he reportedly shoved the reporter, and now the NBA is investigating. This isn't something that's going to go away quietly, even though the reporter has apologized and amended his article to take that part out. And the last thing I'm watching in Pomp's Playbook this week is Patrick Mahomes trying to bring a WNBA team to Kansas City. Now, Mahomes signed a $450 million contract when he was just 24 years old with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he immediately became one of the fastest growing investors in the world of professional sports. He started by buying a minority stake in the Kansas City Royals, the MLB team, and then he led that up with a whole host of other investments too. He's a minority owner in the Alpine Formula One team. He also bought shares in Sporting KC and MLS team, and him and his wife were part of the ownership group that paid $5 million to bring an NWSL team to Kansas City. Now, these investments are already up a lot on paper, with the NWSL team reportedly valued north of $180 million so far, but Mahomes now wants to use that same ownership group to take advantage of the WNBA's expansion by bringing the last expansion team to Kansas City. This is far from a done deal, as there are 10 to 12 other cities vying for that expansion team as well, and Kansas City would be the smallest TV market in the WNBA by a wide margin. But obviously having Mahomes in your ownership group helps their bid. This week for the deeper dive, where I give you a play-by-play analysis of news in the sports world and its significance to your bottom line, we're going to be talking about all things college basketball. Now, there are a million different ways we can attack the college basketball season, which officially tipped off this past week, but I primarily am going to be looking at 3 things this season. Number 1 is the freshman class, and more specifically, Cooper Flagg. Now, for those of you that don't know, Cooper Flagg was the number 1 overall recruit in this last year's high school basketball class. He's a 6'9" player, he's 17 years old, and he's a freshman at Duke University. But the reason I'm going to be watching Cooper Flagg is because I think he can have the same impact that we saw Zion Williamson have at Duke, where he captivated the entire entire country, with the main difference being that the NI rules have since changed and Cooper Flagg can make millions of dollars this year. In fact, Cooper Flagg has already signed a number of deals, including a shoe deal with New Balance and a sponsorship deal with Gatorade. It's projected that he can make upwards of $2.5 million this year before potentially becoming the #1 overall pick next season. The second thing I'm going to be watching, though, is the new era of women's hoops. Now, it's no secret that women's hoops, and specifically in college basketball, blew up last year. Caitlin Clarke in the national championship game against the University of South Carolina averaged just under 19 million viewers. Not only was that 4 million more viewers than the men's national championship game last year, the first time they have ever outrated the men's game, but it peaked at 24 million viewers and was the most watched basketball game, men's or women's, college or pros, in 5 years. It was absolutely a tremendous outcome, and it led to a $920 million media rights deal for the NCAA for the women's tournament, but also a whole host of other tournaments as well. Now, a lot of people are expecting this viewership number to fall off, given that Caitlin Clarke has left college basketball and headed to the WNBA. But I'm not so sure that's going to happen, because there's still a bunch of other stars in women's college basketball today. We're talking about players like Paige Bueckers and Juju Watkins. And my guess is that those stars can keep viewership elevated. Maybe not at the number that we saw previously with Caitlin Clarke, but certainly above the number that we were accustomed to before Caitlin Clarke and the Iowa Hawkeyes made the national championship game last year. But the last thing I'm going to be watching in college basketball this year is UConn. The UConn men's basketball team has won back-to-back national championships with coach Dan Hurley, and this year they're going to be going for a three-peat. Now, this is a huge deal because no team in men's college basketball has had a three-peat since the late 60s, early 70s with John Wooden at UCLA. So this would be a massive deal if Dan Hurley and the UConn Huskies can pull it off. Not to mention that Dan Hurley almost went to the NBA this past season with a massive offer from the LA Lakers, only to turn that deal down to sign a 6-year, $50 million extension with UConn. So if UConn is able to pull off another national championship run, they would clearly be in a class all by themselves in college basketball, and Dan Hurley would continue to be the hottest commodity in all of basketball. We've made it to the one-on-one, a conversation where I get to break down news and sports with a key player in the industry. This week, I'm joined by Steve Phelps, president of NASCAR, to discuss the latest in the racing empire. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So I'd love to kick things off, given that the championship is on the horizon here, with just some feedback from you on how you think the season has gone so far.
Well, I think the season has been terrific. I think the racing product itself is arguably the best racing we've ever seen. We've had 18 different winners out of our 35 races. It's just the competition level is at a level that I don't think it's ever been at. I think on the business side, we've extended a bunch of charters. We have new partners that have come in. It's just I think overall the sport is positioned very well. We've got some great new media partners on the horizon, plus a couple of incumbents that will be coming back in 25. So we're excited about where the future is. As I said, I think we're positioned very well.
Traditionally, NASCAR has been a sport that was sort of super simple to find because you just had a couple media partners and the races were easy to watch. They were always in the same places and things like that. But in the upcoming years, you've signed this new media rights deal where you go from having about 2 media partners to 5, adding in some streaming partners and things like that. That obviously helps with increasing the revenue. You're adding new partners. It gives you guys a boost there. But how do you work that dynamic between getting as much money as possible and making it accessible for the average fan to find the races each week?
So Fox and NBC wanted to come back. We are eager to have them back. They gave inventory back, and the inventory they gave back between the two of them ended up being 10 cup races, which we split, Amazon and Warner Brothers Discovery, so TNT and Max. Why that was important, and then they gave back inventory for our Xfinity series, which we sold to the CW, and Nextstar's 201 affiliates as well. So I'm excited about the distribution itself because it's a mix of over the air, so network, cable, and then streaming, or cable and streaming in Turner's Turner Sports world. That to us was something that we were eager to try to accomplish. So even before the negotiations, obviously we're certainly looking at an increase that we wanted from a financial standpoint, which we were able to get roughly a 40% increase contract to contract. But equally important was distribution. So we have 33 races, our Xfinity series, that are all on network television with the CW. You've got a mix of, as I said, of broadcast, cable, and streaming for our Cup series, which is our top series. And I'm really bullish on what that's going to do, because you've got these 5 media partners who are all going to be blasting out promotional considerations for our sport. And that, to me, is something that's really important for our sport. Um, so if you think about heading into the Daytona 500, you've got Fox, who has the Super Bowl. They'll be talking about the Daytona 500. You have Amazon, who is going to start doing practice and qualifying the following week. You've got Warner Brothers Discovery, or Turner, that will have an in-car camera component that will be on Max. And then you've got the CW that will be talking about, obviously, the Daytona 500 weekend, but certainly what's going to happen in the Xfinity race on that Saturday, plus those 201 affiliates. I mean, I think we're really positioned well to have, kind of maximize the promotional value that we're going to receive from these terrific media partners.
Just adding Amazon, right? The breadth that Amazon gives you and the distribution that Amazon gives you and their promotional capabilities. We've seen it with the NFL, now the NBA, NASCAR as well. I think that's really important.
When we were, having discussions about the deal itself, we made a big deal about promotion, and they told us that they were going to treat us at the level that, of the NFL. And that's saying something. I think they've had tremendous success, and the growth that they've had with Thursday Night Football has been extraordinary. We believe that our fan base will migrate to Amazon Prime. We've got well into the 70s, the percentage of NASCAR fans who have Amazon Prime. So that, to me, bodes well. And I think we're going to prove that streaming will be an important element for NASCAR racing well into the future.
We've got to take a quick break, but we'll be back with Steve right after this. Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Sports Report. I'm your host, Joe Pompliano, and I'm here with Steve Phelps, the president of NASCAR. I want to pump the brakes a little bit because this deal hasn't even started yet, right? And, it is 7 years and it's going to bring you guys into the early 2030s. But have you started to think a little bit about what the media rights environment could look at the end of this deal? Because many people are estimating that, it could look drastically different than it maybe looks today.
As we think about it, Joe, the most important thing really is just the growth of the sport. If we are continuing to grow, which we've done since 2018, I am bullish on a strong media rights deal for the next 7 or 10 or whatever the length of time of the media deal will be. And that, I think, is, that's our job, right? Our job is to make sure that the sport is growing. And I would suggest, based on kind of what the audience composition looks like today versus where we were even 3 or 4 years ago, we are younger, we're more diverse, we're more female. Those are important demos for our sport, because I think people's thought process around when they think about the brand of NASCAR is that we're lots of people who look like me, old and white. And we need to make sure that we are nurturing, kind of that existing fan base that we have, while also welcoming others to the sport. And that is what's happening. And you can serve both of those. They're not mutually exclusive. And so traditional fans want great racing. They want their favorite drivers to win. We're going to give them great content coming out of our new productions facility. And then the new fan wants to feel obviously welcome, but they want some of the same things. They want great racing. They want storylines. They want their favorite driver to win. And they want great content. So I think those things can live together. And in some cases, like the young people, they want experiences. And so when we go to our facilities, we need to make sure that we are constantly creating better and better opportunities for fans, young and old, to have a great time at our facilities and at our races.
Yeah, you mentioned experiences there, which brings me to my next question around some of the different innovative events you guys have done over the years. If you think about the LA Coliseum, the street race in Chicago, the Cup Series is obviously headed to Mexico City next year. Are these events a strategic plan to bring a new audience there, or are they kind of more just an innovative process that you guys are going through to see what sticks and what is beneficial to the sport as a whole?
Yeah, so I'll take the LA Coliseum. So the LA Coliseum, which we did for 3 years, we are not going to do it next year. It kind of ran its course. But the great thing about LA or the Chicago street race is between 70 and 80% of the people who attended that race had never attended a NASCAR race before. So was that a goal, is to create more opportunities to have people come and experience our racing? Yeah. And I think you do that through geographic expansion. I think you do that through the schedule variation, which you've just talked about. Um, and it's something unique and different, right? Building a quarter mile racetrack inside the LA Coliseum, first time I heard that, I'm like, we're gonna do what? And then I loved it. And I'm like, this is fantastic because we are going to show people that we can do things that are different. We can do things that are bold, that can do things that are innovative. And I'd say the same thing about the Chicago street race. Similar thing, 75, 80% of the fans who attended in the first 2 years of that race were brand new fans. And the racing was terrific. And other than the biblical rain we had in year one, and more rain in year two, the events in Chicago have been nothing short of spectacular, and great results. Both from ticket selling standpoint, but certainly from a media standpoint. Both of those races being the second highest races of the year, for us, it works. So you have this idea of, and it's just not schedule innovation being bold and innovative. It's everything we do, whether it's the new car that we're racing, which started in 22, the next gen car, or schedule variation, or looking at different body styles, continuing to move the boundaries on rich content that we are providing to our race fans during the week. All of those things are important. The use of data, and we're totally um, committed to make sure that we understand who these fans are so we can speak to them.
I'm curious what impact, if any, you can speak to around the Netflix show that NASCAR launched. That you guys obviously announced that it's going to be given a second season, which to the casual observer means that it made sense for Netflix to do again. Obviously, it probably makes sense for you guys to participate again as well. But I'm curious if there's anything you can point to and say, like, that was a tangible benefit from doing this content series.
Well, I would say this, and I don't know whether this is a fair analogy. What we do know is that that audience tended to be more female. That audience tended to be slightly younger, and kind of where our fans are today. To me, that's a good thing. I mean, we're building casual fans. That show is intended to try to get someone to put NASCAR in his or her consideration set for, you know, sports and entertainment. That's what the show is meant to do. I think, anecdotally, you start off the season and you race the Daytona 500 on a Monday rather than a Sunday because of rain and a rain out. Um, our audience year over year dropped 27% because of a Monday race. Um, and for us to be able to claw back and now have a positive number, is we've never done that before. You start double digit down, and really the three of our, I would call, crown jewels or biggest races would be the Daytona 500 minus 27, the Coke 600 affected by rain significantly down, I think 15%, and the same with the Chicago street race down roughly 50%, 15% because of rain. Um, I think, and then for somehow with the rest of those races, right, the other 32 races that we've had, we have clawed all that back, and now we're in positive territory from a ratings perspective. Lots of things happened that made that, happen, that we were that were on the positive side. But I think the Netflix show helped us do that. And again, we have for next year, obviously we have the Netflix show that will come back out, and we're really excited about it because it's again a playoff show. Our playoffs has for the 9 weeks have been spectacular. The racing is just unbelievable. The storylines every single week was just amazing. And so they've got a lot of really good content to work with. Um, and then we have other things that we're doing with Amazon, what we're doing with our YouTube channel, all the creation of really cool content that meets people where they are. And I think that's really important for us, Joe, is to make sure we are doing that. So if I'm a Netflix watcher and this pops up on my feed, I'm like, oh, I'm going to check that NASCAR thing out, right? Or I'm an Amazon Prime member and really cool content that's coming through there that's not just race content, but other content. Or other, our own channels, other channels that we're pushing content through. All of those things help us grow. And it really is about the growth of the casual fan. And then, we'll nurture the avid fans and give them what they want so they continue to consume us significantly. But it really, to me, the growth of the sport is going to come from growing new fans into the sport. So you can do that, not at the exception of our existing fans, but certainly making sure that everyone is being served properly.
That's awesome, Steve. Thank you so much for doing this. I really learned a lot, and I hope people all check out the championship this upcoming weekend.
Thanks, Joe. It was a pleasure to be with you.
The clock is winding down here, but we have just enough time for some final buzz. The last thing I want to talk about today is the PWHL. The Professional Women's Hockey League is dropping the puck on its second season on November 30th, and it already has expansion on its to-do list. The league says it has a goal of adding 2 more franchises by the 2025-26 season next year, and they already have more than 20 markets on their target list for bids. The top options currently being considered are cities like Detroit, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Chicago, Quebec, and Calgary. This is in addition to the 6 existing teams in the PWHL today. But more importantly, the PWHL is only going to be in its second season, but they're already off to a hot start. Dodgers owner and Guggenheim Partners CEO Mark Walter signed on to finance a league as its owner and buy out the competitor Premier Hockey Federation, and the first season was a massive success by all metrics. In just 6 months, the PWHL averaged nearly 5,500 fans per game across 72 regular season games. They had 21,105 fans attend the Toronto versus Montreal game. They also signed more than 40 sponsorship deals, including with blue chip companies like Scotiabank, Air Canada, Discover, and Hyundai. And heck, Billie Jean King even signed on as an investor and advisor for the league. Now, looking forward, it's going to be important to see how they structure the league's TV deal. They already have a distribution deal in Canada, and they have smaller distribution deals in the United States. But it's going to be interesting to see if they can sign a massive, broader distribution deal in the United States with a bigger distribution company like an NBC, a Fox, an ESPN, or someone else like that. We're all out of time, so it's officially game over for this week. Thank you so much to Steve Phelps and for all of you for joining us. Make sure to tune in to Yahoo Finance Sports Report on Thursdays at 5 p.m. wherever you get your podcast. I'm your host, Joe Pompliano. See you next time.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.